By the
Catch the
beach.
throw. Well, we were all catching the throw because we had no other choice. Catch the throw as a cheersha. We are celebrating, I suppose, the long-standing love affair that we have with the Seaside. And as we say, we're there, hail, rain or snow. We are thrilled that Shane Lahan is with us, Mr. Seaside himself. Here he comes with all the yokes. Now,
colourful Shane
seriously,
Lahan.
all the buckets and spades and all these things. And we have a paraphernalia of treats that Di and I, I'm sure, never had any of these things.
Notions.
Notions.
Lads, you might think we've always been going to the seaside. You know, you've always thought that we're going to the beach, but it's actually relatively new.
How new is it, though?
Yeah, so the history of it kind of goes back, I suppose, back to people taking the waters, as it were. First of all, it was a medicinal thing, you know. I had a great quote from a fella. He says, this was back in 1770, talking about going to the sea. It strengthens the nerves, restores vigor to the limbs, assists the spirits, and in numerous instances contributes to procreation.
My God,
Lord.
So going
stuff in it.
to the sea became a thing for the elite and so on, and the Victorians started going and so on. And it was only, I suppose, post-famine, when our light railway system started to come in, that the seaside became a resort. Then, I suppose, in the 20th century, the Irish Tourist Board was set up, and they were promoting various excursions to the sea.
Yeah.
But what really happened was in 1939, there was, first of all, the Paid Holidays Act, where people got 2 weeks holidays, and all of a sudden you had the transport system, you had the time off, you were being paid, and you could all head off to the seaside.
Okay.
So places like Courtown, places like Youghal, Ballybunion, wherever they were serviced by a train, became a seaside venue.
It's amazing, isn't it?
No, it's interesting when you think about it, because Shane was saying they just didn't have... Nobody paid you to be off, so you had to keep working.
Yeah, that was it.
But they were only the good jobs, though, Shane. What about if you were farmers and so on?
Well, I was talking to people about going to the seaside. Any farmers I met, they all had to come away from the seaside about 4:30 because milking had to be done.
Now, don't get me wrong, farming's a great job to do.
I know, but there was the day out. The day out had to be cut short as well. But what I loved thinking about the seaside was all the stuff that you had to bring with you. So you can imagine now going down in the train, or later on when people had a car, whatever, they'd go down. And like, if the sun comes out in Ireland, let me just tell you this. If it's a sunny day and the forecast is there, into the car and the amount of stuff that has to be brought. And I often watch people coming and they're carrying everything down with them, you know. And there's the famous kind of things. For long ago, we used to have, the only thing we had was the old Foxford rug that was inside in the car. That was our picnic for whatever we were put out for. That was our spot then. That was your location. The really posh people used to have a windbreak, and they were the 4 poles that were stuck in with the lovely material on them and so on. But there were no chair. There might have been a deck chair that would have been very fancy.
All these things are alien to me. We never had anything.
But you sat down on the sand. That's what it was. And everything.
Actually, you know, we have fun. Just to look back, we've got some amazing photos. Can we see these, James? Tremor, a seaside resort, which is still really famous, going back in time.
And like the day out, looking at that photograph, do you know what I put home in on straight away there was the ice cream. Right? Yeah. Because the day out at the seaside, we'll come back to the stuff that you brought in a moment, but the ice cream was great because and it's really interesting because before they had to have ice machine, as it were, blocks of ice to keep the ice. It was only when refrigeration came in, the Frigidaire, as it was called, was the motor company in America patented it, that we got the electric one, and then you'd have, literally, in Cork, the great Bradleys, or Bradleys as we call it, ice cream, and you'd have the ice cream wafer, like you have there.
Do you know what, Tom Egler?
I'll tell you a good one, right? Rita's mum came home last week, right? With a block of ice cream and a pack of wafers.
Oh, yeah. There's nothing like it.
And I had 3 of them.
There's nothing like it.
It's so gorgeous.
It's the treat that's there. And we always associate it with going to the beach. But and of course we never called it the beach, we always called it the seaside. I don't think I can get it into my head using the term beach or whatever. But what I love as well then, there was these toys then that were brought along, the inflatables, right?
These are new though.
These are very new.
These weren't around when we were young.
No, well I suppose they were there they could have been there in the 1960s or any time like that.
Were they? We never had those.
What I loved was to see this valve. Most people were driven mad by that. And your poor mother who was at the beach, her job was to blow up all of these things. It was bad enough coming in with all the children, right?
Poor mom winded.
And then in the 1970s there was a thing called the Lilo, which was this
yeah.
And there was no pumps or anything. It was your mother's lungs that were being used to blow up like...
And as Noel and I were saying at the top of the show, never would you see a man. Rarely. We were saying we never went to the beach with our dads.
Yeah, my father.
They never went.
My father would drive us to the beach, but it was kind of alien to him. He still had his shirt and his tie and his jacket. The sun could be beaming down, and there would be no sense.
It's amazing, though.
Yeah.
There was no beach gear or beach wear
There
that
wasn't.
time.
No, there was nothing like that.
I know it sounds very funny, like.
No, but there wasn't. And you know what I have to say? We used the word, we had our togs, right? And just talking about togs for a second now, right? Like, it was so funny. Like, I was the youngest in my family, so we kind of hand-me-downs, you know? And look,
Your togs were well worn by the time you got them.
This is lovely footage. Look, this is my great friend Patrick Creedon. And Patrick and myself, we're in school together and we laugh. But here he is in his togs, like jumping into a hole, okay?
That's great fun,
And his
Jen.
father, Joe Creedon, the great Joe Creedon, took this footage. And look, this is universal. This is all children do. They dig a hole and they challenge the sea. I mean, this goes right back through time when you think of it. But what I'm interested about my own togs is that there was a kind of an elastic, but the elastic had worn out by the time it got to me. So I was always in a fairly precarious situation because I was kind of knotting it at the side to try and keep it on. And if a wave came in, you were kind of exposed, as it were.
An unexpected wave.
Yeah, an unexpected wave.
It would catch you.
But there was no other thing. Do you know the other thing I remember about Seaside?
Yeah, mine is melting, so we have to even know
Before the bills.
There weren't even hats or anything like that, or what you see all now, the baseball caps. There was the old ubiquitous handkerchief with the 4 knots on the top.
Oh my God, that's true.
To keep the sun off the head. And talking about togs, I had an old neighbour long ago, he used to tell me, he used to make his togs out of 2 handkerchiefs. And he used to make a triangle out of the both.
Tarzan's job.
Tie them on, and that was there, you know. And when you think about it as well, I think it's so funny. We were, if the sun was out, we were encouraged, as my mother would say, to get a colour, right?
Yeah.
And there was
my
no
God,
such thing
terrible.
at
Sun
all
cream.
as, like, I still call it suntan cream. I don't call it sun protection. I call it, because the object was to get us with, and you know, some of us, we never had it. And we were putting on, some people were putting on baby oil, you know, and you were literally basting yourself like a turkey on the sun, right? And you wanted your colour instantly. And the sunburning was absolutely criminal. And one of my favourite things of memories, actually, was that you might be delighted, you might be entertained, peeling off a full dermal layer after being lobstered.
When you hear about it in today's day and age, because I remember one time I fell asleep on the beach and I woke up and I was like a Honda 50. I was red on one side and I was white on the other. I swear to God, I was scalded though.
But you can get really sick from sun.
Very, very sick.
Oh no. But I suppose like it was a different. And then there was another one you might remember called, I think it was called Amber Solaire, and it was like an instant tan before. It was like an oil that you put on, but there was a kind of a carotene in it.
So you'd burn quicker.
You looked great, you know. Or there was another one. It had some sort of coconut in it. There'd be bees and flies and everything.
Like Hawaiian tropic. They were lovely. They were lovely. They smelled so beautiful. I loved them. Shane, can we show a photo? We got one in from one of our viewers. This is really interesting. This is Paul O'Farrell's family. And I remember this as a kid, that you actually had like a knitted swimsuit.
Oh yeah, that was one of the big things. And you know, you can imagine the knitted swimsuits, there was a pattern that came out. And can you imagine that after a few sessions in the water, you know, how that would expand.
It would get very heavy though.
Oh, good God, yeah.
You want to be a good swimmer to stay afloat.
It was fashionable, it was practical, it was a part of the time. And I just kind of loved the innocence of it, the way we were. Like, the other thing then was all the food that you had to have, right?
Some lovely biscuits.
Sandwiches.
Well, they had, like, and some fellas were still adamant that they'd want the tea. Tea was still there. Some people purchased, you might remember them, the enormous flask, tartan on the outside,
had one
with a gigantic cup on the top that your father
and
probably
if it fell, it would break the thing inside.
The glass, that was it. And you had to be very careful. Philip was carrying the flask. Some people went so far to bring the gas stove, the gas ring, as it were, or the Longo was the Primus. It was an old-fashioned one that you pumped the paraffin up, and there was a different one like that. But you know, they were boiling away the tea, and they'd make the tea, and they'd have the bottle of milk, and they'd have the sugar, and they'd have the old crockery, you know, the old Blue Band crockery or whatever.
I love that.
Yeah, and you know, eating at the Seaside, there was one of my...
It's always go straight for the sticker on.
But
This was the present you'd have to bring home from the holidays then, wasn't it?
Wasn't that great?
Yeah.
How many people remember that? If anyone was going on holidays, bring us back a rock.
I know, bring us back a stick of rocks, yeah.
And you'd be so delighted. And you remember, they were sugary, they were sweet, and you'd be cracking them off, and you'd be sucking
And you'd be
them.
certain that it was actually made in Cork, right?
Oh,
We used to
You'd
get
be
these things
absolutely-
to Knock. Do you ever go to
Knock,
Knock and
yeah,
get
yeah,
it? I remember going to Knock Shrine and
I-
having like holy stuff on
I
it.
saw one recently from Donegal, and all the letters were backwards. It was very confusing. It was like something from another part of the world altogether. But
Do you have Marietta biscuits there, Shane?
well, like when you think about the picnic, there was queen cakes and fairy cakes, and there was all sorts of Swiss rolls, and everything was brought in, and sitting down and enjoying that. And I suppose you'd have biscuits, like,
Because it was a big day out, Shane, wasn't it?
it was a massive day out, and it was like there were novelties. There was the donkey rides, as it were. People, like, I often think as well. I was thinking of Ballybunion recently, and I was thinking there was the men's beach, there was the women's beach, and there was the nuns' beach. Because the nuns, a lot of the religious orders had their houses there as well. And one of my pals at work out in the Tremor Road campus, Rachel, she was telling me she was mad to be a nun, because she's often be peeping in at the nuns' beach, and that she thought this was great altogether.
They were in
that
their full habits.
They were in their full habits as well, yeah. But nuns at the beach, like, meant that the life was good.
Nuns on the
my
run.
Lord,
Nuns on the run.
yeah.
Shane, good morning.
Yeah, we have to be on the run now. Thanks for all the paraphernalia. We'll keep the old
Oh,
buckets and spades for the summer.
I'll keep
the rock.
I'll keep the old rock there, Shane. Thanks very much. We'll see you again.
Absolutely. Take care. Thanks to Shane, of course. Thanks to all of our guests throughout the week and